Another freaking big smallmouth. We started pulling up outside of the spawning flats, finding little rock piles, and started going to town on them. Another 4-pounder. Hey YouTube, welcome back to the Locked In Anglers Fishing Channel. Today I'm super excited to talk to you guys about my favorite type of bait to throw in the spring, a finesse swim bait. So for me, I classify the finesse swim bait into anything under that 5-inch size. And typically for those, I'm throwing them either Texas rigged or on a jig head. I just love to use a swim bait to cover a lot of ground. It's a really successful bait to get down in the water column where these fish are moving up towards spawning and just cover a ton of water and use a bait that's highly realistic and that really targets above average size fish. So for me, I really like the Strike King Rage Swimmer and the Kitech Swing Impact Fat. Both of these are typically the only like middle-sized swim baits that I will use, just because they have super reliable action, fantastic colors, and they just flat out get bit. Like, you can go through so many fish on these baits and just wear them out all day long on them. When that swim bait bite's going, it's an electric bite. It's super exciting. They hit the living daylights out of it, and you just get to smack them right back. And it's hard not to get excited about a swim bait bite. So before we get in the goods, just want to give a quick shout out. Really appreciate all the support of this channel. If you guys haven't liked or subscribed, really appreciate it. It really helps us out for the YouTube algorithm. So if you haven't done that, make sure to hit that subscribe button. All right, let's get into it. For me, everything starts with the swim bait head itself. I break it down into 2 categories. 1, how deep am I fishing? And 2, how fast do I want to be moving the bait? So first off, if I'm fishing anything over 25 to 30 feet, I'm starting with a 3/4 ounce swim bait head. I'm either throwing a Revenge swim bait head or the Dirty Jig swim bait head in that 3/4 ounce size. And I use for color, I really don't have a preference. I typically just try to slightly match the color, whether it's like a green and white, a blue and white, or just the nude color. I really don't worry too much about the swim bait color head and really focus more on the size. So 25 plus, 3/4 ounce, 15 to 20, I usually go to about a 1/2 ounce. And then anything under 15, I'll stick in that 1/2 ounce to 3/8 ounce range, and really just try to focus on if the fish are on the bottom. If they're on the bottom, I'll go to more of the 1/2, and if they're kind of sitting in the middle of the water column or just a couple feet off the bottom, I'll go to that 3/8 size. And then anything under about 7 to 8 feet of water, I'm going to that 1/4 ounce size, and I usually go for a 1/4 ounce size with a longer shanked hook, just so I can throw a decent sized swim bait on it. So basically for 3/8 and up, I'm throwing that Dirty Jigs or I'm throwing the Revenge head. For anything that is smaller in that 1/4 ounce size, I'm either going to the Picasso tungsten head, or I'm going to the Dirty Jigs Matt Steffen head, either in the 3/0 or 1/0 hook size. Both of those are really good for pairing with your smaller size baits and just really help you stay in the target strike zone and keep your bait off the bottom and out of the structure when you're targeting fish in that really shallow water. So like I said, I use this bait to cover water and target big fish. So for me, I'm targeting areas that are true staging areas before they get to the spawning flat. So I'm looking at your ledges before the flats, your points before the flats, or your long extended points that actually serve as a flat themselves that the fish can stage up on before they slide up to the shallows and spawn. For me, I always start with a 4.3 or 3.8 Kitech, one of those middle-sized baits, and I absolutely love the smallmouth magic color. It is super realistic. It looks like perch, it looks like kokanee, it looks like a little bit like a shad. I mean, it looks like so many different types of bait fish, and it just hands down is my favorite bait. It gets bit both smallmouth and largemouth. Just love that color, and it's my true confidence color. So for me, I'll always start with that 3.8 to 4.3 size, and then based on how successful the bite is, that's when I'll decide to upsize or downsize. For me, if I'm getting lots of bites on the 4.3 and I'm catching decent sized fish, I'll bump it up to that 4.8 size. You usually stick to that same color, that smallmouth magic, and just try to target a little bit larger fish that are equally as aggressive. But if the bite's tough, that's when I really start to make some key adjustments. So if the bite's tough, usually we'll go down, I'll make sure I'm at least throwing a 3.8. If not, go down to that 3.3 size. I really like the 3.3 size because it still has a really large tail kick with a really small profile of the bait. So it's a really good bait to use on a lighter head, like a 3/8 to half, or 3/8 to quarter ounce head. Really good to throw it on that. And if that's not working, or if I know the bite's going to be really tough, the best finesse swim bait out there is the Megabass Spark Shad, the 3-inch. This bait absolutely has pulled together some crazy days for us when the bite just was not going whatsoever. We usually throw that one on these, either the Matt Steffen guppy head or on these tungsten ball heads, just because it matches the bait size really, really well. I'll take one out to show you. So the tungsten head is just absolutely fantastic size for it. So usually we cut the weed guards off, but then if you just look at how this bait marries up to it, that's a quality size hook, and it's positioned in a great spot on the bait to just get really good hookups. So we'll either be using that head if we're fishing up shallow and we want to use that quarter ounce size, or we'll go up to some of the bigger sized Matt Steffen Dirty Jigs guppy heads. That bigger size really helps us get down in the water column and target those fish that are there. They're just not overly aggressive. So if that's not working, one, we might just want to be shying away from a swim bait. But if we know that bite should be going and there should be fish that we can target, then we still have one more trick that we rely on that's really helped put together some good days for us on the water. And it all revolves around the smaller size swim bait, but now varying the type of head. So the two that we use, one, the Cool Guys underspin. Super finesse, very small, really great action, has a tight wobble to it. This bait, when you marry it up against a 3.3-inch Kitech or a Spark Shad, this thing will get bites when nothing else will. That mix of the blade and the smaller profile, just a fantastic combination. Typically we're throwing this on a spinning rod, usually like a 7-foot medium heavy, or a 7-foot medium action rod, just so we can continue to get a good hook set in them, but get that bait as far away from the boat as possible. And then now the sneakiest one that it's become more and more popular across the states in the last couple of years, but there's still not a ton of guys throwing it. The Okashira head. It's got the kind of your spy bait style blade on it, and it just puts off a very subtle vibration and a subtle rock to the bait when you pair it with a Spark Shad or a small Kitech. And this thing across the country has just helped us. Well, I mean, this thing has just put fish on a boat when I couldn't catch them on anything. I couldn't even catch them on a Ned rig, but I could catch them on this Okashira head. With this one, we're throwing the quarter ounce size. We've gone down to the 1/8 ounce size. It's just really hard to fish and keep it down. So we really like the quarter ounce size of the Okashira head. And for that Cool Baits head, it's either that quarter to 3/8 ounce head that we're throwing most of the time. But that's basically our process. We're starting middle ground every time with that 3.8 to 4.3 Kitech. Bites awesome, upsize. Bites really tough, downsize. Simple as that. And then just make sure that you're staying cognizant with what size of head you're using for the depth that you're fishing. Typically, we always want to keep our swim bait within 2 feet or so of the bottom, because most of those fish are pinned to the bottom and they're feeding up. So you want to work that bait just above the bottom, so it's at a perfect height where if there's any boulders or lay downs, you're not going to stick right into it, but you're going to deflect off of it and get that reaction strike. But I mean, like I said, this is my favorite way to catch them. I love throwing a swim bait, and it just has caught so many big fish for me over the years that it's the first thing I pick up if I want to cover water and try to catch a big one. Thanks for coming along, guys. We'll catch you in the next one. Tight lines.